Welcome to the Messy City Podcast, where we talk with the people who design, plan, build, develop, or even just think about how to create beautiful, successful, and humane cities and towns. Let's learn from each other and create places we truly care about. Welcome back to the Messy City Podcast. This is Kevin Klinkenberg.
And this is Abby Newsham.
Special guest in the studio. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. We were just chatting beforehand and ended up going on long and like, oh, we should have recorded this.
Yeah, we probably should have.
That's all right. I mean, we were kind of catching up. Abby has been super busy lately working as a planner. And she's at Olson Associates, based here out of Kansas City, of the Kansas City office.
Yeah, in the Crossroads.
Right. And so why don't you talk just a little bit about what you're doing right now professionally, and then we'll get into – we do have an article we're going to talk about that I think is really fascinating that I want everybody to stick around for. That's called Zoning Won't Save Us. We'll come back to that, but I do want to catch up a little bit with Abby and talk about what all you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I won't make this like a formal pitch or anything like that. But yeah, so I'm still on the consulting side, working with communities, doing a lot of mostly comprehensive planning work, but also like corridor, downtown planning, that kind of thing. And I really work as a project manager. So while I have managed projects in the past, I was kind of a manager doer mostly in former roles, and I'm starting to now kind of move into this project manager / mentor position that has really left me thinking a lot about the people who have kind of mentored me over the years and what did they give me to support me and help me learn. So something that I've been thinking about a lot as I now have I'm not old, but I have younger people that are fresh out of school. And so now kind of sharing knowledge with them and helping them kind of build their careers, which is really fun and rewarding and challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah, our process is a charrette-based process, which is something that we were talking about, that it's just amazes me how well charrettes work for community engagement when they're done right. And I've just been really moved by the communities that I've worked with and how that kind of process has facilitated really meaningful conversations in many different contexts. So that's been really fun for me. So yeah, I'm just really busy right now. I'm also doing we didn't talk about this, but I've been doing some kind of engagement with Urban Land Institute, which is kind of refreshing some of their local programming here in Kansas City. So that's kind of a TBD kind of thing, but I've been really engaging with that group to support their programming. And they have a really good executive director right now, Catherine, who's kind of revamping things. So very exciting.
And you've been on a bit of a hiatus from Upzoned. Which is bad for all of us, but good for me selfishly because now I get to grab her and throw her on a podcast here. So.
I know it's been a while since I podcasted and I feel kind of unseasoned now. But yeah, so I think the last episode I did was in December, and I'm not sure if Chuck has said anything, but they basically are doing some of their own restructuring at Strongtown. So they've put their podcasts on ice. So we'll see when that is thought out. But for now, I'm a woman without a podcast.
Well, you're always welcome here.
Thank you.
So, I'm glad to have you on here. So we were talking a little bit about, I just want to share with the audience a little bit of the conversation about charrettes, because I actually think it's a really important conversation. So I always think about this, I was trained as an architect. Architects know about charrettes. We're kind of taught about it in architecture school, and the legend of where the word charrette comes from the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and there's this whole kind of funny legend, but there's like charrettes and then there's charrettes. Like I have been with other architects before. They say, well, we're going to do a 2-hour charrette today. And
not a charrette.
And I would say that's not really a charrette. That's like, it's like a brainstorming
It's
session.
like a meeting.
So why don't you talk a little bit about when you use that term as a planner for your projects, what exactly do you mean?
So the way that we do it, it's a 2 or 3 day endeavor where you have a stakeholder group that you bring in. And the way we do it, we make our stakeholder signups public. So we can accommodate like 100 people. I had one a few weeks ago that I think was like 70 people showed up. So the way we set this up is so that big groups can engage, and we kind of give a short presentation to the group at like 9 o'clock in the morning. And then we break them out into different groups and we separate everybody out. So we like number them off so they can't work with their friends. And then they go to different stations and there's lots of different things for them to do and questions. And, I try to always bring the questions kind of down to earth. Like transportation is a big one where it's like, you really just want to ask questions about like, where would you not allow your kid to walk because it's too dangerous, or, things that are kind of rooted in just everyday experiences. Or for example, one question I like for people is if you had a friend in town, what would you show them for the day? So that way you start to get an idea of what people really value, what they think is special about their city without saying like, what do you think is special about your city?
Right.
So I like to get creative about how to ask those questions. But anyway, so lots of different stations. And then following that, doing like a session with just client group and other kind of technical people. We typically have citywide maps as well as sites that we're focused on. And so kind of working through different approaches and what we heard throughout that first session, reading the notes and starting to document all of the sticky notes and feedback that we get. And then going into basically closed studio for like 24 hours and we have landscape architects as well that churn out some really amazing drawings. And it's kind of amazing what they produce in a day. There's one individual that he was giving a presentation. His name's Cody. Shout out to Cody. But he was giving a presentation on a concept in front of the group the next day. And just the level of detail. He had like thought through the pavers and thought through like specific things about how the space would work. And it was just really, really cool the way he was thinking about how somebody would experience a space and then conveying that to the group. But, when they come back the next day to see what we've come up with, we're calling them ideas. They're not recommendations at that point. There's markers everywhere. Everything's messy. And they come in and we basically just do an informal pinup. And they can come and engage with us, engage with the materials. And then you have the public open house. But most people from the public were on the committee. So you don't typically get as many people show up to that, but you'll get some people who are interested or heard about it from someone else come in. But I mean, that's that can be extended into a 3-day model as well. But, those are 3 days is a really long time, but it's something that is definitely doable. But that's what I mean when I say charrette.
Yeah. I mean, I always think of it like it's an iterative design process.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. You're ideally starting with like a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah.
And you're trying to really collaboratively work with your client, whoever that is. In many cases, that is the community. I used to do this with developers as well. And so sometimes we're approaching it and the client's the developer, but it's also we're engaging with the community at the same time. And one of the conversations we were having is like, there's a real magic to this process. And it's amazing how if you have this kind of open book iterative process, how, almost every time it works out really, really well.
Yeah.
And if you can just kind of trust the process to work out, like one of the things we were joking about is it gives you a lot more faith in the community engagement process and design process compared to other ways of doing this.
Yeah. And I have found with this process, you just get way more people that engage with you that are genuinely excited about possibilities. I think in planning processes, especially in public engagement processes, it can be really easy for things to be oriented around like what's wrong and, you know, what the city is doing wrong and what I'm upset about and my particular grievance. And then you get people who grandstand and, you know, potentially create open mic night over very niche issues. And this really helps to set the stage to have a more holistic conversation and to get people talking to each other as well, not just talking to like a consulting team or their planning director or whoever else from the city or the government entities in their room, but they're actually like engaging with each other and talking through these topics. It just builds a lot of trust. And I think it orients things around possibilities instead of what's wrong. And I'm typically a pretty optimistic person. So like, I think to be a planner, you kind of have to be, right?
Yeah. Well, you're thinking about the future. You want to think good things about the future.
Let's think good things. Yeah. It's very easy to think very cynically about the future, but I mean, I literally, my entire job is to think optimistically about the future, pragmatically, but be thinking about possibilities and problem solving. So even if you have hard conversations, which you always do in any community, any context, bringing those to light through this process, working through it in an iterative and kind of curious way that creates just a orientation around possibility is the way I like to think about it. So
yeah, it's really a fun process, and it can actually give you a lot of faith in the fact that people can solve problems together. I think, you know, it's funny, thinking back to when we used to run charrettes in the 2000s, you know, I told Abby before, like all of this really kind of came out of the CNU. And frankly, a lot of us really learned this from DPZ, from Andres Dewani and DPZ. And then others like Victor Dover at Dover Coal and people who really refined the charrette process. And eventually there was a group called the National Charrette Institute, which got formed that did trainings. I did some of those trainings and you kind of learn your own tweaks and ways to do it. But we actually most of us were doing like 6 or 7 day charrettes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have done one 4-day charrette and it was a lot.
It's a grind. So 7 days could be kind of a grind.
That sounds kind of insane.
Yeah. I think the longest I actually did a 10-day charrette.
Oh no.
Yeah. That was something else. And it was fun. It was like the evolution of all that was really interesting. I know later, when I was actually living in Savannah and I was pursuing a project with my friend Dhiru Tadani, who works on his own as an urban designer and architect. Dhiru had really moved to a model at that point that he swore by, where he would have multiple like 2 or 3 day charrettes. So he'd have a 2 or 3 day charrette and then a pause for like 2 months. And then come back and do it again.
Do it again. Wow.
Yeah, as a problem solving method to really dive deeper into something.
I'd be really interested in that structure and kind of like how they structure the follow up. You mentioned that you've done trainings for charrettes, and I wonder if that still exists, because I would love to do something like that.
I should know this. I know NCI got absorbed. I want to say it got absorbed. It was either by Smart Growth America or a university, but it may have been Smart Growth America that absorbed it. I think you can Google it. It's still out there, National Charrette Institute. And Bill Lennertz was really one of the original creators of that. So I think those trainings still exist. I hope they do, because they were really good. And I just really felt like there's a whole lot of people that just do community engagement terribly.
Yeah.
Consultants do it, governments do it, developers do it. A lot of people just really botch community engagement, and it gives engagement a bad name.
I think it gives planning a bad name.
Yeah, absolutely. And makes people very, very cynical about everything. And I understand it. I get it. But when you actually see a process that's structured differently like this, you're like, oh my God, this is great. We can actually solve problems together. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I mean, I had a moment a few months ago after a charrette where there was an individual who was extremely skeptical and kind of cynical about the process openly.
Mm-hmm.
And on the second day, they were like, I feel like you actually listen to us and you get it, and thank you. And it
Mm-hmm.
was really touching to me because I'm like, yeah, we actually do care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the process is one that shows caring because it's iterative and
Yeah.
open. And doing engagement in these kind of other ways that are more conventional, it just doesn't lend to building that kind of trust. And it's kind of surprising because charrettes are not necessarily a new thing, but
Right.
it's still not the norm.
It's not. And let's call it what it is for a lot of people who do engagement and do projects. It's like community engagement's like checking a box.
Yeah.
It's like the professionals, whoever they are, whether they're planners, engineers, architects, people that work in cities, they feel like they have an answer for a problem and they produce a solution, and then they go hold a couple of meetings to check a box and say, we engage the community. And I think most people who participate in that process kind of feel like it's all fake, and
because it kind of is when you do it that way.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it always is fake. I'm not saying the intentions are always bad, but that's the nature of how we do what we call engagement or community engagement. And so when you have the opportunity to actually participate in a real charrette process, I think it just opened your eyes to like, oh, there are much better ways to do this sort of thing. And that can get us to productive answers.
Well, the iterative method is important because it's like a two-way conversation where you're going back and forth and drawing based off of feedback. That's why I say that I'm interested in the individual that you said does like a follow-up charrette.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really fascinating to me because you could actually go back and redraw some of these plans and develop it even further.
Yeah.
And we'll have a conversation about this in probably a week or so, but there's another kind of approach that we've been doing that is actually about like developing changes to, parking lots and sites and like creating projects through the process with like engineers. And so there's some really cool ways to apply this iterative design engagement structure that, like you said, can be applied to many different project types.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm glad you're doing all this, and glad you're busy, in demand.
Yes. It's been a busy, I guess, year. Really, the last 6 months have been the most busy, I would say. But last year has been busy.
It's always an interesting change to go through to then move into like a leadership role, where instead of you're just one member of a team, now you're leading a team.
Yeah. And I think, I've been part of a team before, but, having more people that are, I don't like to say like working under me, but, I'm older. And so I'm giving tasks to people and delegating a lot more and wanting to, I think a lot about team environment and just how do you support people to speak up and kind of engage in a project as like a team member, but not somebody who's just being delegated a task, and create ownership in the project. And I just think about that a lot. I've been reading some Brene Brown books because she's got a lot of good books on like project management and that kind of thing. So it's just something that I've been like deep diving into is like, how do you, like, one really good piece of advice that I got from a Brene Brown book is this idea that you should always give somebody an example of what finish looks like. So every time I give somebody a task, I like take all the other examples of that thing and say like, you don't have to like copy this, but this is what finish looks like. So go in your own direction, but this is what it has looked like in the past. So it gives people like something more tangible to work with rather than have just working from scratch. So that's been a practice that I have found to be really effective. And then just having more I guess, more patience with continually like checking in on things and like mentoring and not taking things on yourself, like just being really dedicated to like, I'm gonna teach somebody how to do something and then also accept that they will do it differently than me.
Yeah.
So I've been just thinking about those kinds of things a lot, and it's like a challenge, but it's exciting as well. And I've been thinking a lot about when I was getting out of school and had started, at Gould Evans or Multi Studio, and what kind of advice I had gotten at that time and how it affected me. And, people like Dennis Strait and Graham and Chris and you even, you were never my boss, but you know what I mean? But just thinking about like how I was taught in that setting and how I learned during that time. I will say that one thing that always stuck with me was that Dennis, I think it was like we were workshopping something and he could tell that I didn't agree with him. I think I just wear my emotions on my face kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and he was like, I can see that you don't agree with me. And he was like, don't be afraid to speak up and disagree. He was like, please disagree with me.
Mm-hmm.
And from then on, I fully expressed every time I disagreed with him. And we had many disagreements through the years. And, he's continued to be, now that he's not my boss, he's my friend, and has continued to be a mentor. But sometimes you have to be like told to not be afraid to disagree with somebody who has 40 or 30 years on you.
Yeah.
So
got to have that permission structure.
Sometimes,
to be able to do that.
And I'm pretty assertive, so it says a lot that,
Yeah.
Even I think not everybody is as assertive. And so making sure people know like, hey, you can say things and you won't hurt my feelings or step on my toes. Because I think in planning, you get good planning through challenging each other internally and questioning your assumptions about things and working as a team.
Yeah. I think it's very true. And I also thinking about your comment about, sort of training and mentoring and letting go. It always seems like really one of the hardest steps to when you shift over to more of a leadership role when you have a team is kind of letting go of the way you do things.
Right.
And really, first of all, I think that for people who are good at what they do, it's really tough to let go of work and not just do it all yourself.
Right.
But if you are in a business and that business is trying to grow, and if you're trying to grow as a person, you have to let go at a certain point and understand you can't do it all. And then that means that the people doing it may do it differently.
Yes, totally.
And that's okay. And you have to reach a comfort level with that, which takes time. That's a hard step to get past for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is a hard step. And I had never really contemplated that before I started getting really serious about delegation. But for me, it's gotten better. Like I'm moving into the acceptance stage of that. But I think it takes more patience too, because it's just a different method of, instead of just knocking it out in 2 hours, you're delegating it and then reviewing and then discussing it. And so it's a more patient process, but then it will get more refined and efficient over time.
Right. And I mean, you can't ever build a successful team until you let go, of those things, because other people can't grow in their jobs. And then you can't take on, more tasks and other things. So, but it's a tough bridge to cross at times.
Well, and I've even been really impressed by, like some of the younger people on the team who are even like, I've been kind of giving them the ability to like take a section during a charrette and it's your thing and you present on it. And the willingness to do that has been really cool to watch.
Good.
Because, you just want people to not just learn how to do work, but also to speak about it, I think is really important. Yep. And I've just been really impressed by people's willingness to jump in face first and engage in that kind of way.
All right. Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's
it's
great.
really cool.
All right. Well, for those of you who miss Abby and miss hearing Abby, that's your Abby update.
Yeah, there's the Abby update. Hopefully I'll be on a podcast somewhere one day again.
Let's talk about this article that we ran across,
Yes,
which was really fascinating. It's called Zoning Won't Save Us. The author is Billy Cooney. I actually found it on Southern Urbanism on that Substack, but they reshared it from Billy's own Substack, which is called Flan Urbanist. And it really fascinating because it's very long, so it's not a short read. But I thought there were a lot of really fascinating nuggets in here that really get to, what I think what his point in a lot of ways is that these technical solutions that we talk about a lot, especially when it comes to zoning, while yes, it's necessary to deal with all those, like that in the end won't give us great communities.
right.
And I think it's one of the things you said, it's not right to think that removal of all zoning rules will magically produce, the kind of older, like pre-war communities that we used to have or that we often admire. And I think there's a lot of truth to that there's one thing he says, and there's sort of a math aspect, there's a culture aspect. Let's talk about the math aspect first. One of the things he said was getting rid of zoning would not unleash urbanism of times past if the math doesn't make sense. And he's really talking about like the development side of things that, there is developers still have to build buildings and make money.
Yeah.
And if they can't make money doing a certain thing, they're not going to do it. So I think we talk about this a lot, but we also just kind of hand wave it away a lot too, it seems like.
I mean, I completely agree with that. And he has a quote earlier in this article where he says he's talking about somebody else, that their quote is, "You get what you zone for, or you get what you regulate for." And that is an incomplete picture, because development is not just the result of regulations. I mean, regulations are one piece of the puzzle that influences what gets built, and finance is this whole other piece of the puzzle that I think in the planning world, I think that it's often not really fully acknowledged, mostly because people just don't. Finance is not our background, right? And in the public policy sphere, I think there's a lot of ignorance around development financing and performas. And I mean, I really appreciate the work that like people like Incremental Development Alliance are doing, where they're doing performa training for like public officials and people who are trying to solve this problem of not getting the kind of development they'd like to see, because it isn't just about zoning. It's about, can you actually get financing to make something work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like, how much of it do you think is lack of knowledge and how much of it is just, I don't care if the math works or not? What do you run across?
I mean, that's a good question. I feel like I can't answer it. I mean, I don't know. I think it depends. I think finance is something that is really intimidating to people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's intimidating to me, and I've very intentionally, as a planner, like gone down this adventure of trying to figure out how development works.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like writing plans about reinvesting in historic buildings and incremental infill and filling in all the missing gaps in neighborhoods with vacant land. But I also want to see it happen. So I think it's really important that if we mean it, we should figure out how to make it happen. So I think, I don't think it's that people don't want to understand it necessarily, but maybe it is, they feel like it's far over their head or it's intimidating. Yeah. I'm sure there are people who don't care if the math works and they just want to regulate something. Mm-hmm. But they're not going to get the outcomes that they want. So I think if they care about the outcomes, we should collectively be trying to figure out how to get the financing to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I often think that it's a weird thing. But I just feel like we need to demystify like money and how people make money and why things happen, why some things happen and don't happen
Yeah.
as it relates to just economics. And even even if those of us who went through a college education in in one of these professions, um, it's shocking to me how few of us really feel like we understand basic finance.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it's that's the education system, I suppose, and maybe that could be a whole other podcast. But yeah, basic finance is something that is not basic, I guess.
Yeah.
But it also isn't as complicated as I think people think it is if they're not regularly doing performas or trying to understand it. I think that it can be complex, and a lot of projects are complex in terms of like their capital stacks and how they're actually implementing things. But the basics are all there. I mean, a performa is a performa, and I think that people can be taught some of the basics of how it works in the public sector and in the private sector to people who are working in public policy.
Yeah. And I'm guilty of it as much as well. I learned a lot of that stuff way after the fact, like way after college. And
I mean, it's not in the curriculum of architecture school or planning school necessarily.
Yeah. Which is kind of bizarre.
It is kind of bizarre. We don't learn how the buildings get financed.
Yeah.
We just learn how to design them or how to make policy for the built environment.
Well, architects, I probably talked about this before, but it's almost like we're educated more to be artists than anything.
Yeah.
So which is kind of a wild thing when you think of how many years you go to architecture school.
There's a lot of licensing requirements. Yeah. I mean, becoming an architect is not an easy feat.
God, I know. Yeah. And so,
not to add another thing to it, but it would be good if architects and planners had some level of understanding of development.
Well, I remember
financing,
and even like you said, a lot of this, there is a basic level of understanding that is not hard to achieve. The first time I had a really good introduction to it, I was a Knight Fellow through the University of Miami back in 2003. And that was a year-long program. It was like a Knight Fellowship in Community Building. And there were about a dozen of us each year who got selected for it from around the country. And we had a weekend one year where we went to the University of Miami, and had a weekend real estate finance workshop. And it was basically, if I remember right, it was some experienced developers. And I think there was even like one guy who teaches this course at MIT like every year. But basically like in a weekend, he went through and taught us all the ins and outs and basics of like development finance, especially for larger projects. And God, it was so eye-opening for me at the time. And I think back to that. And I remember at the time thinking it's crazy that I was that far along in my career and I didn't have that knowledge yet.
Yeah.
And that once you go through it, you're just like, oh, okay, some of these things start to make sense now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I love the idea that when we had that roundtable, I think Colby was talking about doing a workshop where you have lots of different stakeholders in a room within a community, working through how to make a project work together.
Right.
And I think something like that could be really eye-opening in a place like Kansas City or really any place.
Well, and you mentioned your involvement with ULI right now. ULI has a program that they have used for years now. That's called, what is it called?
Is it Ready?
No, it's not the Ready program. It's the
TAPS.
No. Good grief.
Oh, Urban Plan.
Urban Plan.
Yeah.
Which is basically that same notion. You sit down, especially with public officials, and you're trying to educate them about the economics of development in a short period of time. And it's really useful and helpful, and something that, you should probably try to get to your elected officials before they're in office
Yeah,
or as soon as they're elected.
That's part of the conversation. Yeah, for sure.
So another thing that he talked about in this article that I thought was fascinating was really the culture aspect. And this is something I've just been really dwelling on a lot lately, but he talked about it in reference to third places. I think I'm going to try to read some of this, but it's like, it's not that we don't have enough space for third places. I think this part here, there's nothing inherently social about any given coffee shop or bar. It's the history and community that makes the space meaningful. And what he's really kind of lamenting is that as we move a lot of our connections online into online places, so those third places also become online. And he references kind of Robert Putnam's famous work about bowling alone, that he didn't call just for changes to the physical environment. He called for more participation in all spheres of life, whether religious, cultural, and political settings. And I thought this was really interesting and good because he's really getting at the human aspect of it. That, because, we certainly, I'm as guilty of anybody. I'm an architect, so I think about the physical. I think about the buildings and everything else. And we think about the buildings and the spaces a lot. And we tend to obsess about those. Oh, if we just have the right, like, public space or coffee shop or bar and make sure those are accounted for in a place, then the social aspect is going to work.
Yeah.
But it may not.
It may not.
And there are, and it may also be that in places that are physically nothing like we would design, that you could actually have a great social context, that people just figure it out and they overcome it.
Yeah, I've dwelled on this a little bit as well, because I feel like in this, in the planning or architectural world, you can envision these beautiful places, or, oh, what if this was that? And I feel like in the real world, sometimes you do get that coffee shop in the place you thought would be a great place for a coffee shop, and then it fails. And there's so much more than, I think, just the built environment that actually makes something work. Or like you said, sometimes something opens up, a restaurant or a cool brewery, and it opens up in kind of a weird place and people seek it out, and the built environment is maybe not even that great in that area. I think of like the East Bottoms,
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a classic old, dead industrial and working class area. But there's been a community created around a couple of really cool places.
Yeah, exactly.
And, often there's something we used to talk about like that, even in a lot of the suburban areas where you have houses that it's like all garage facing the street. Well, one thing, humans have an incredible ability to kind of adapt to things, and people have garage parties.
Yeah.
They'll open up the garage and all of a sudden they figure out a way to socialize and do really cool stuff in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to just kind of look at the built environment and then assume the way how people are going to interact with it. And it's kind of this push-pull, because people do respond to the built environment. And I think that there are trends that come out of certain development patterns and design, but it isn't like the end all be all for how people will interact. Like you said, people do adapt, and people, if you have a bunch of people that have kids all around the same age, they're going to socialize no matter what on a block, because that's just the way that kind of thing works.
Yeah. Yeah. The kids create the social context in many respects, whether it's like a quote unquote perfect built environment or not.
Yeah.
And people are always going to find a way. But I think it's interesting because kind of what he's lamenting here is that, a lot of these things are not really technical problems or solutions, that they're kind of human problems and human issues to try to solve. And that a big part of what might make our communities better is this sort of idea, just each of us figuring out how to participate more in real life with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And being intentional about doing that, which I think looks different for everybody, but creating intentional community. And I think that's something that we do a lot just through our work and hobbies, and I think just the way we operate. But Yeah, I think social media has made people really isolated too. So a lot of people aren't really engaging in the way that they did before. I think the pandemic impacted
Yeah.
this as well.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's just different now.
Yeah.
And I don't think any amount of zoning is going to like change that necessarily. Like things are going to adapt. And I think that humans are like fundamentally social. So I think that that's all going to evolve over time. Like it's not
Hmm.
just going to stay the same. But I think that we are in kind of a weird period in terms of how people are interacting with their built environment.
I'm kind of curious how you see it with people around your age and people younger than you, and how what people are doing and how they're interacting. And I just say that because they're, I'm a little older. I'm a Gen Xer, so now that makes me the old person in the room. And when I was growing up, when I was in my teens and 20s, um, this is obviously, a lot of it was pre-internet or at the very, very beginning of the internet era, and so things like email and all that were becoming available, but it was a sideshow, really, that for life. It didn't
Yeah.
dominate your life in any way, and so young people, as younger people, we did a lot of things out in public together that people just don't seem to do as much anymore. Um, and so there's probably a long list that we could think of that are things like that. But going to the movies was like a big thing.
Yeah.
And you would see each other at movies, going out shopping, or go hanging out at the mall or shopping
Hmm.
districts, whatever those are. Just generally being outdoors, doing a lot of things, going to bars. Um, most young people went to bars,
Yeah.
and so I'm now at an age where I'm completely out of touch with what people in like their teens and 20s especially are doing for social aspect. But I do have children, so I think about that, and I think about like what would I like their life to be like from a social aspect. They're young enough that they have a very active social life because they're elementary school kids.
Yeah.
But what do you see? Like what do you see as differences that people are? Where are they getting that social engagement?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you that I'm not connected with anybody in their late teens, early 20s, and I
Help me out here.
I realized that because I moved not that long ago.
Yeah.
And when I was moving, I was like, surely I know some people in college that would take $50 to help me move my stuff. And then
Yeah.
I realized I'm now at this weird age in my early 30s where I don't know anybody who's like 22 years old, which sucks.
Yeah, that is weird.
So I can't speak to the college goers, I guess. But people my age or maybe, around 40. I don't know. I mean, I feel like, first of all, it depends if they have kids or not, because
Yeah.
there's like very different patterns for people
Sure.
who have kids, obviously. But I do feel like there's a lot of people that I interact with on a somewhat frequent basis, because of like Instagram. Like
Mm.
like I have girlfriends that we just like send each other memes. And so it's like I interact with them on a frequent basis, but we might see each other like once a month, like go to happy hour or go to
Hmm.
an event or something like that. I feel like there's a lot more. I mean, I know a lot less people drink, a lot less people binge drink, which
Yeah.
is
It's not a bad
really a
thing.
good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
but I don't know anybody who like goes out to like clubs,
Yeah.
to like get drunk, or
Yeah.
that's something that I feel like is not common. People seem to want to go to like a brewery or um, go to a restaurant. The economy is kind of weird, so people, I think, seem to be going out less.
Mm.
So I mean, I like to have people over and just hang out, if possible, like host people.
And I should probably say, like, I think I would say part of your baseline is you're a pretty social person.
I'm Yeah, I guess
You're pretty
so.
extroverted.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm extroverted. Like I know I probably seem
You
extroverted,
strike me that way. Yeah.
but I get very like exhausted and have to be alone.
Sure. Well, all of us do that.
Maybe that's still extroverted.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
whatever. I'm
your
extroverted.
recharge time is short.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bounce. I just need to sleep, basically.
But like you get along with people, you like people,
Yeah.
and you like being around people. And
Yeah, and you're right that it's like if I go through periods where I'm not engaging with people, it's very like or just being around people. Like I'm always saying like I just want to go out on the town to like I don't even need to talk to people. I just want to be like surrounded by people. Like I have a restaurant that I'll go to sometimes where I'll just like sit at the bar and work on a crossword puzzle or something and but I like to be surrounded by like the loud noises of people shuffling around and
that's
talking.
Classic extroversion. Abby.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, all right, fine. Yeah. Okay. So I guess so.
That means we get energy from the presence of other people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I get that. I feel very similarly.
Yeah. But some people are not that way.
Right.
And probably feel maybe more soothed by engaging via the phone with people and that feels more comfortable. Yeah, I wish I like had a full response for you as to how people socialize these days, but I feel like what we see in the small business community kind of tells us how people are interacting. I feel like a lot of restaurants are closing, just a lot of different businesses have been closing, which makes me really sad, but I just feel like people are not going out as much as they used to.
Well, and there's also the other aspect are like civic institutions and how people get together. So when I was really young, there still were a lot of what you would call like the civic and fraternal clubs that older people really, people older than me used to get together with. So whether that's, like the Kansas City Club was every big city had like a city club, but then there are also, like your Lions Club and your Rotary Club and the Eagles and all those sort of fraternal organizations. And then churches. And, it was super common still, even when I was much younger, that churches were much more active. And I don't see that as much either. It seems like a lot of churches are, not all churches, but a lot of church going is in decline. And a lot of those old fraternal clubs seem to be on their last legs. They're kind of like there's a little bit of, probably when the boomer generation dies off, a lot of those clubs will just go away because there's not young people in them.
Could there be a new club?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Like those were outgrowths of a certain era and a certain way that people used to socialize. And a lot of them were men's clubs. That was the dynamic, for decades, that, men worked and then they had their social clubs and women stayed at home and they raised the kids and women got together with other women and did things. And then that all changed and it changed the nature of the clubs and those organizations. Rotary, I think, is one that has adapted really well and seems to be still very viable with a focus on business people. But a lot of the other fraternal clubs have just not really seeming like been able to adapt and attract younger people. And so that's always my question. They're like, what replaces them? Because that was one way people got together. It doesn't have to be that way.
That's interesting because like I know about Rotary Club. It's never occurred to me that it's something that they would want me to come to it. I for some reason I thought maybe there was like an age limit.
Oh yeah.
Like you have to be a certain age or you have to be invited to it or something like that. I mean, I do feel like there are different, not really clubs, but there's like advocacy groups or people. I mean, I feel like you have a lot of different groups that you engage with, and that's a form of socializing around, advocacy for Kansas City and other things like that. And you create friendships out of professional relationships too. So I feel like, at least in my world, that's been kind of a theme.
Yeah.
And like ULI, I go to things that they host, and so there's some like social kind of casual programming that happens in those spaces. There's the sports leagues
Yeah.
as well. I know
Sure.
a lot of people who do sports leagues,
Yeah.
volleyball, um, kickball, that kind of thing. And then there's certain places in town that, like PH Coffee is a good example, where I feel like they're constantly doing programming.
Hmm.
There's frequent, different groups. I mean, my small developer Kansas City group meets there
Right.
every month, but they frequently have other groups that are using that space throughout the month. And we'll even do like neighborhood nights where people bring
Mm-hmm.
food, and it's kind of a potluck thing. So they're not selling food, but
Yeah.
people bring food. So stuff like that. I mean, I feel like that's really important, and has created a sense of community in the Pendleton Heights neighborhood. And a lot of people are probably not super aware of it, but I bet you there's other neighborhoods that have kind of their own version of that.
Yeah.
People are also doing I haven't been to one, but like progressive dinners
Sure.
where they go
Those
to
are fun.
different houses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I bet you in my neighborhood they have them, and I need to like investigate it, but
Yeah.
I haven't yet. So yeah, I'm thinking of like all the ways that people socialize, or people in my world socialize nowadays, and yeah, it feels like it's probably different than the way it used to be.
Yeah. And, it's going to be different, and that's life. Things change, and
Yeah, kids
people,
these days,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know.
Yeah. And people find new ways to do the same thing. And that's cool. I find it curious. There are a couple people that I like to read their work and follow in this world, like Chris Arnott, just a tremendous writer. And he has talked a lot about his many, many travels about the things that are good and bad, or just different than maybe what they were. Chris is closer to my age, a little bit older than me, from when he was a kid. And, there's like, clearly technology is better, and has made life better in a lot of ways, but the social relations and aspects we're a little more atomized as a society, and there's a lot of that's not as good. And then I had Seth Kaplan on here on the show one time, who is just a really great, interesting writer, and academic, and he has written a lot about his neighborhood, and which is in the Maryland side of DC, and just the sort of things they do to try to intentionally create community and reinforce their community in a more suburban place. And both of them really talk about the human side of community in ways that I think as architects and planners we tend to overlook.
Yeah, because it isn't just about the built environment. And to your point, I think people are really trying to be intentional about creating community. And I feel like it's taken a few years post pandemic for us to start to shift in that way. But I guess the theme of all the different examples that I've been thinking through that's kind of coming to me now is that it is intentional, and people are kind of finding their own ways to be social.
Yeah.
And I do sometimes wonder if, like in this age of social media, if we've hit some kind of peak to the point that people are kind of realizing that it's not really authentic connection with other people, and that we need authentic connection with others. And, really it's just like a dopamine addiction.
Yeah.
And it's just feeding your brain dopamine.
I think more people have kind of realizing that there's a lot that, like, there's plenty of good in social media and technology, but there's also, it does reinforce a lot of bad aspects of our nature.
Well, and I don't think that it replaces real human connection. Right. And I think that it's been used that way in some instances. People kind of get attached to it and are engaging, but it's just, I don't think it does the same for like your body's sense of belonging that being with other people physically does.
Yeah.
Like I think it makes people more stressed out, more anxious. I mean, it's a lot of information that people I mean, I feel like with this, like the reels or the TikTok, I don't have TikTok, but
Mm-hmm.
the flipping through reels, like it's subject to subject to, it's just like constantly changing information, a lot of information all
Yeah.
at once. And I just think that contributes to poor mental health,
Yeah.
really.
And I've been thinking about this a little bit more, just, from the standpoint of my day job and what we're trying to do here in Midtown. And I've had a heavy focus on physical design and improvements the last few years, which is typical for organizations like ours. But really what I've been thinking a lot about lately is we need to think more about like the software instead of the hardware. And what else can we do to intentionally create activity and life in our areas. Like, how can we shift our own focus and maybe we spend too much time. I don't know. Maybe we do, maybe we don't on the physical side, but that there's probably a whole lot more we could be doing to intentionally just bring people together for all manner of activities. And that might enhance our area more than, frankly, anything else that we decide to do.
Well, programming is so important. And in the group chat that we have, I sent earlier today that example. I don't know if you looked at it, but it was a apartment project that was built in Austin, Texas. And they had this public space within it that connected to a trail. And they intentionally had food trucks that they put there. And it was a really cool place. And when I was there, it really struck me that like they could have just designed a public space that nobody uses and called it a day, but instead it was really about the programming and creating opportunities for businesses and giving people a reason to come to this place. And it was really vibrant and busy and active. And I think that's why it's really important to support small businesses in places, because it's not just about the built environment. I feel like often the small business owners are the ones that are actually creating community and actually creating, or at least creating the space for clubs and other programs to take place. So I think there are businesses that are doing that, but it's just not as frequent as I think it could be.
Yeah, I remember several years ago reading a story about a guy who was trying to revitalize what he felt like was his city that was dying. This is in Australia, in southern Australia, I think. God, I'm probably gonna completely get the name wrong. I want to say it was Newcastle. That's probably totally wrong. But this guy, he basically started doing pop-up activity in a lot of these empty buildings, and then gradually created almost like a festival atmosphere. By having not just artists, but all sorts of other small business people take over and breathe life into abandoned spaces. And in fairly short order, it really worked. And all of a sudden, he created a sense of life and community just by really focusing on the people side and populating spaces with people who wanted to create and do things. And it was such a cool story. He got a lot of national and international attention for it.
It's a very Monty Anderson approach.
Yeah.
Very incremental, very scrappy, pop-up oriented, and you just build up from there.
Yeah. And I'm just not sure still to this day, I'm not sure we value that enough. Just that sort of letting the humans create activity to attract other humans.
Yeah. It's funny when you stated that simply. Yeah. It's funny that's not, I think that the conventional approach to developing a place is to like create a master plan, develop a bunch of buildings, have some mixed use buildings that remain empty because no local businesses can't afford the space, and that you need to have some like anchor tenant. And, it's kind of geared more towards bringing in like established corporate brands rather than allowing people to take risks at a local level and build up from there. I mean, that is the kind of thing that creates culture.
Yeah.
like Applebee's doesn't really create culture.
Oh, you don't like to hang out at the Applebee's?
I mean,
at the bar at Applebee's?
I'm not
That
saying
wasn't
it's
the
like
place you were referring
horrible,
to.
but like, you know, it's like if you're trying to create like sense of place, community, like I'm sure there's a town out there that like that's the spot.
Yep, I'm sure there is.
But
I'm
it's
sure
not
there is.
because of the business, I think. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like it is really important to allow people to create culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's an aspect I'm fascinated about. And I was really interested how the author wrote about that in this piece. And I think it's really well taken that, you know, we tend to think everything is a technical problem and solution, but really a lot of things, most things probably are not. They're probably a human problem and human solution. Abby, before we run out of time, do you want to do a down zone?
A down zone.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
It's been a while since you've done a down zone.
Yeah, we could do a down zone.
So yeah, for anybody not familiar, on Abby's podcast, she wraps it up at the end by calling it a down zone, where we talk about something that you're doing recently, something interesting that you're reading, watching, or just doing that you want to share.
Okay. You want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, I'll go first since I just put you on the spot.
Yeah,
there a little bit.
You go first.
We just got back from a lovely trip to Hawaii, where we spent about 12 days in Hawaii. Took the whole family. A much needed break that was truly wonderful. It's kind of an ordeal, and we actually spent 4 days in Oahu, and then we went to Kauai for 6 days. And I say an ordeal just because like the weather didn't necessarily cooperate with us. So, and I know there's not a single person here shedding a tear for me that the weather wasn't perfect in Hawaii on our trip.
I mean, that is a bummer.
But we managed around it, and we were able to do most of what we needed to do. But I have 2 bucket list items in my life. Okay. One of them is to visit Pearl Harbor, because I was born on Pearl Harbor Day.
Okay.
And then the other is Machu Picchu in Peru. So those are my 2 bucket list items. There's a million things I'd love to do, but those are 2 things that I absolutely feel like I must do. And so we had it on our itinerary to go to Pearl Harbor when we were staying in Honolulu, and the weather didn't allow it. It was so windy that they had to shut it down, the site. So we couldn't go out to see the Arizona Memorial. And that was a real bummer. So I think I have to schedule a future trip back. But I will say the 6 days in Kauai was just what a wonderful place that is. Just that's sort of what you imagine Hawaii to be, the scale of it, the beauty. And we had just incredible, just the wildlife that we saw and encountered was amazing. So that was a really wonderful experience. And it's interesting. I also got to talk a little bit. My friend Dan Parolo with Opticos Design, I know his firm and his business partner Stefan Pellegrini, they've been doing a lot of work in Kauai over the years and doing planning work out there. That's a gig you should look into. Yeah, yeah. And you can start to see now the fingerprints of a little bit of that work. It'll take decades for more of it to come to fruition, but it's a very unique and cool place, and it was a really nice escape from the middle of winter.
I'm sure it was. I have like so many things that I could include. I will say I went to Los Angeles in the middle of January for the first time. I had never been to Los Angeles. And Nolan Gray gave me a bunch of recommendations of places to go, which I was able to get to a few of them of the long list there. And so that was really cool. We actually went to Disneyland for a day, which I thought was going to be really cheesy. And I ended up being really fascinated and actually really impressed. They have like a Star Wars land, which was extremely detailed. And a lot of the rides were like very interactive. Like you're like part of a story. And I texted Chuck. Yeah. I texted Chuck Marohn, was like, I understand why you're obsessed with Disney now. Like I just had never really understood it before.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And there's a documentary called The Imagineers that's all about how they built different parks over the years and how it advanced like not just art, but in craftsmanship, but like robotics and a lot of other technologies along the way. So really fascinating thing to look into. Like they just basically put a bunch of smart people together and have them figure out how to create these crazy rides. And I mean, they have done some, it made me appreciate what I saw more.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. I think that the only other thing that I'll share is a couple of years ago, I got a bunch of tile like in central Mexico, and I've had it in boxes ever since. And it's basically, it's a bunch of little tiles that you put it together and it creates a mural. And I just never really had a place that I envisioned it. And now I have a house that has this really pretty stone mantle, like fireplace mantle with, above it, it's drywall, and it's just like the perfect place to put this mural.
Cool.
So I've been building that. And
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So building that, and I'll have to get more tile for, like, it's not big enough for the whole space. And so it'll be an iterative project, but I'm putting together this kind of central piece. It's like a sun, and it has this really pretty border around it. So
I have to see pictures of that.
I'll show it to you. Yeah, it's really pretty. So it's not done yet, but it's like built onto a surface, and now that needs to be put up onto the wall, fixed to the wall, and then filled in all the gaps. So it'll be, and then I'll have to build on it by getting more tile. So
you always have some really cool projects at home. So I have to say.
Always have a project. Yep.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Project person. So.
All right. Well, Abby, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Good to chat again. And we'll have to figure out a way to get you on more regularly, even though I know you're super busy.
Yeah. So. Well, I'm just down the street now.
Yeah.
So I walked here.
Oh, so, perfect.
Yeah. I'm very, very close by these days.
All right. Abby Newsham, thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin Klinkenberg.
Talk to you later.
Yeah. Thanks.